Good morning, everyone. This is Greg Aiden with Aiden Leadership for another episode of Servant Leadership Podcast. And today I've got the pleasure of interviewing what I would call one of the more interesting men I've ever met. We're going to find out all about Anson Ross Thompson here in a second. But as I was getting ready for this show, Anson, I actually forgot how we met. So I want you to help me remember that. But tell us about yourself, why you do what you do, and we'll get into some other fun questions as well.
Yeah, well, thank you, Greg. Always a pleasure, and I do consider you a very good friend of mine. So when I introduce myself, I always start with who I am. I am a grandfather of three. I am a father of three. I'm a lover of one. I've got a beautiful wife. You've met Jenny.
Yes.
To me, the most beautiful woman in the world. I am a writer. I'm a teacher, and then I own a small business. The small business that my wife and I own together. We're in 48 states. We do basically insurance services, so commercial insurance, personal insurance. That's my day job. And then my hobby is I'm a writer. So I've got a few books out on Amazon, and I write daily. I write 1,000 words every morning, about 99% of the time. And I try to look at society and try to make sense of really what's going on. We've had an interesting last 3 years, but and just trying to bring enlightenment and I guess encouragement to others. And not everybody agrees with me, and I don't agree with everybody. And so I'm just throwing my stuff out there to say, hey, this is a little bit different for me.
Yeah.
What are you thinking? So it's a passion of mine.
And so let's start with your writings. I mean, every single day, and I love them, by the way, 1,000 words plus or minus. Hey, how do you do it? And I know why you do it, but what mindset are you in every day that you feel this joy in writing? I don't see it as a chore. So just let's hear from that, and then from there, I would love to hear about your new book. Can't say I can. Enjoy the fucking journey title. I want to hear all about that too.
Okay. So writing. When I started writing years ago, I was writing for insurance trade publications, the most boring writing one could do. And as a side, I was writing 500-word, muses, now and then. And I was sending them to an editor, and she reached out and said, "Hey, I think you've got enough for a book here." And I said, "Really?" Mm-hmm. And she goes, "Yeah." She goes, I think it's really good content, and so let me help you publish a book." So I published my first book, which was called "Marketing with Naked 70-Year-Olds." And it was about a marketing program I'd run with my parents, who I'd convinced to get naked for our insurance, naked insurance. But anyway, so that's where it started. And then I just found myself, as a writer, you become very curious about what's going on in society. And so every day I interact with people, and I hear things, I see things, maybe on social media, maybe in the news, that I'm not going, "Oh, that's perfect." I question a lot.
Thank you.
And so I think that there's a narrative in society that there are two or three voices that we need to listen to. And if they say X, then it's X. And I'm the guy that says, that doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah. And there's other people that read my work, and they're like, you either make sense or you don't make sense. It's funny, Greg, I meet a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so many people come up to me and they say, I read your stuff. I don't read it every day. And I always say, I wouldn't read my stuff every day either. I mean, who would do that? But I do. I get up. It's the first thing I do. I get coffee, piece of Nicorette gum. And typically the day before, I've snipped a couple items off social media or in the news that really get me going. And it's very similar. You read it. So it's good morning. I talk about my morning, my previous day, and then I get into the meat of whatever issue I want to talk about.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and we'll get to the journey book here in a second. But you are taking us on a journey, which I love, and I get to get inside your head, your heart, your soul. And there are times where I go, this one doesn't resonate, or it don't even have anything to say. But then, as you know, there's sometimes where I can't wait to respond, because I so agree with where your heart is and where your soul is. But I also love how you keep your family top of mind, top of heart, always. It's not that you talk about Jenny all the time, or you talk about your family. Anyone that knows you knows that is it. And then everything else falls well below it. And I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Anson, one of the reasons you're so freaking successful is because you have your priorities in line. And when you hear me say that, what resonates? What did you hear?
Well, when we started, I said I'm a grandfather first, a father, a lover, and if you listen to how I introduce myself, that I that's not BS. That is
Yeah.
exactly how I perform my daily functions in life. And the only thing I would probably add to my introduction is community focused.
Yeah.
I'm involved in multiple communities, and how do you make an impact in a community? You can do it financially. You can do it through mentoring and teaching, and so I think it just kind of, I was raised, look, I was Beaver Cleaver, dude. My parents still married to this day, 83 years old. I grew up in a small town in Indiana. I had the perfect existence. I was talking to my best friend the other day and he goes, you were born around in second. And I said, oh, I've acknowledged that many times. I mean, I had a great childhood, but it gave me a good foundation to build on, being focused on family and trying to be the best, leader wherever I am.
Yeah. And when you talk about family to me, and you just mentioned leader, I believe leadership and parenting are connected at the hip. It's impossible to not call you as a dad or as a mom or as grandpa, not a leader of your family, your community. And I love that. And I believe, and I've said on this show many, many times, that if we don't start getting parenting right, this country, this beautiful country, is not going to get any better. And I don't care if you're an R or a D, or you're from the South, the North, Midwest, East. I don't care. If it's not working, don't continue doing it as your own parent. But anyway, tell us about your book. Enjoy the fucking journey. And what the title is intriguing, but what should we expect when we read it?
Well, actually, that's about 4 books ago. So enjoy the fucking journey. I released probably 2 or 3 years ago, and then I typically drop a book a year. My last book dropped last October, not this past. So I took off
Yep.
a year for. We'll talk about it.
Yep.
But it was called The Rule of 8%.
That's
And
right.
the rule
Okay.
of 8%, yeah, and I think we've talked about that before, but basically my attitude is that you're not for everyone, and everyone's not for you. And so there's about 8% of the population that we can just get extremely deep with. And you're in my 8%. I think I'm in your 8%, to where we've had many conversations about life and joy and happiness, and what makes us tick. And we are so far aligned on but I'm willing to say 92% of all people, hey, I love you and you're great. But that's the 8% that really helped me learn who I am, and can, help me be the best version of myself.
And someone might be listening to it the same way I am. And I'm somewhat of a perfectionist, and I'm trying to let go of it as I rounded 60. But how did you get to 8? Why not 7? Why not 9? Why not 12? Where did the number come from?
Completely made it up. Completely made it up. I've always said, so I'm in the insurance industry. I'm very unique in my space. I don't look, sound, taste like any of my peers. And I do that for a reason. I've always used the analogy, I want to be on stage with 100 of my peers, or 99 of my peers. And I really, truly believe there's about 8% of the people, not 10%, not 6%, not 12, but 8 people will say, whoever that guy is, I'm intrigued. I'm curious about him. I want to talk to him. So by being yourself, because everybody else is taken, it does allow you to separate and then connect first visually with your tribe. And then if you hear you speak and they go, that guy sounds like I might want to talk to him. So that's completely made up. No scientific basis for that. I made it up.
So obviously, Servant Leadership Podcast, name of the podcast, name of the show. You know what I do. My goal, my love is simple: help leaders become better leaders. And when you hear that, what do you believe leaders need to do? Period. What do we need to stop doing, and what do we need to do more of, and why?
I think I attended one of your past programs in the last 90 days, and I think you said, listen. We need to listen more.
Yep.
And I think as coaches, as leaders, we think at times that we know it all, and we get, I'm 53, almost 54, so I got some frame of references and some baggage that is probably so incorrect.
Yeah.
But in a leadership position, I think it's really important to stop and have an open mind and listen to somebody else. I mean, I have completely different beliefs today than I did 5-10 years ago, right? So just to continually evolve and listen to other people and be willing to say, oh my gosh, I've got that one wrong for, 50 years.
Yeah, I appreciate the humility that you just stated without saying it. It's, oh my gosh, I've had that wrong, or I'm oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I wasn't correct yesterday, and thank you for helping me. You mentioned a word earlier too that is one of my favorites, and I've begun to understand that it's much more than a behavior; it's a skill in a relationship, and certainly in leadership, and it's curious, or having curiosity. And I don't know about you when you were 6, 7, 8 years old, Anson, but I'm assuming you hear it in your grandchildren, you see it in other little kids. We always ask the word, or we always say why. Why do you do this, Dad? Why do you do this, Grandpa? Why are you doing this? And I believe as leaders, if we stay curious and we literally lean in, not to tell people what to do, but to be curious about how they're doing it and why they're doing it. Again, when you hear curiosity or be more curious, how does that fit into your life, and how could you recommend it to some of the listeners today?
Well, I think not everybody has that gift. And so I'm very blessed. I've always
Mm,
said I've got a very small skill set. So curiosity, I think for some people is very hard.
yeah,
Public speaking for some people is very hard. But just I think wondering and trying to align what you hear with what you believe.
yeah,
And a lot of times in life there's misalignment, and not just accepting the misalignment, but really asking yourself and asking another person or a group of people, man, I just heard this. And I just and if I can, this is what I wrote about this morning. I was reading an article yesterday from the AP. You got to check your sources, right? So this is Associated Press, pretty,
yeah,
I think middle of the road for the most part. And they were talking about, and I don't want to misstep, and I think it was a CDC, but maybe it was WHO, but they've changed how they deal with child obesity, and up until now they've said, hey, let's just have them exercise and eat better and all that, but now we're at a point in society where there's a new drug, $1,300 a month per kid, that you can put your kid on, and it makes them feel more full, so they won't eat as much. And I thought, what are we doing? What are we doing? And again, going back to parents, what parent in the right mind would hopefully, not educate their child about proper nutrition and all of that. And I know, look, we're not all in the same,
yep,
forest. I mean, some of us live on a desert, and so we don't all have access to the same information and nutrition and all of that. But there are sensible things we can do for our kids, and giving them a shot every day to reduce their body fat percentage. I that to me blows my mind.
yeah,
And so I'm going to, because a lot of people would never read that article. So I'm going to say, here's what, and I referenced the article. Here's the article. Here's what it said. And my mind is blown. So
yeah.
that's the type of stuff I'm extremely curious about.
Yeah. Well, and back to parenting for a second. Again, I'm in that same camp, baby boomerish as you. I think you just missed it. But yeah. Okay. I'm in there. And I don't know that we would have had the money, certainly wouldn't have given me a shot. And I would never give my kid a shot to help them feel full so they can't use their own mind to say, you know what, if I continue to eat this way, and you mentioned eating, I'm going to mention something else that I know you subscribe to, and that's movement. I mean, we have become so stagnant as a society, and just looking around at people sitting there crunched over, staring at this thing that, and I know your belief is, put the thing down, but yeah, parents, if you look in the mirror and you don't like who you are, think about what you could have done differently, and ask your kids, who I hope you love, to do something that you couldn't do or you wouldn't do. I don't know. I just, it's we'd probably have a whole different show on that. But back to leaders for a second. Who is one or two people, human beings, Anson, in your life, and maybe the last 10 years, keep it current, that you believe are some of the best leaders, or this best leadership like people that you admire?
Yeah, I always say my father. I have the best father in the world. Just had an open heart. He's doing great, but he gave me the foundation. My mother too, right? But
Sure.
but just from a male leadership role, I watched him start a company, and eventually, I was able to buy it from him. But so my dad is number one. And number two, I listen to many, many, many podcasts. And the name I'm about ready to say could be divisive for some, but I learned from Joe Rogan a lot. And I've been watching Joe interview everybody, left, right, middle, extreme. And I've learned more from that than I think I ever did from college. And so just to throw a couple out there, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but
Sure.
Right now, I would say those guys are the ones that I'm really, still, I'll see my dad tomorrow, and still
That's
seek
awesome.
wisdom from him. So yeah.
Yeah, I would have said, Dad, he's no longer with us, but I still think back of when I'm with him and the little things that he taught me. Same with my stepfather. What's the secret, you and Jenny? You talk about her a lot in the office where you were prior to this. You had the word queen in the back. I believe anyone who knows you knows that the queen is her. What's your secret? What's your secret for this dynamic, loving relationship?
Yeah. So I was married for 17 years before to a beautiful woman, Jody, my first wife. And the first 7 years of our marriage were great. And then we spent 10 years disconnecting from each other. And so I'm a divorced man. It's probably the biggest heartache I've ever had in my life. But to go through that and then find somebody that mirrors your laughter, that mirrors in our world. I mean, we own the company together. She had a company, I had a company, we merged them. So it's funny, Greg, we are together probably on average 22 hours a day. It's rare. Like the fact that she's not here is weird. Like she would stay back at the office. She had a couple things to do. And I said, hey, I've got to run home to meet with Greg. But I think genuinely loving. I mean, and we all have our friends that they like to do golf, or they like to, because they're not going to be with their spouse. If my spouse doesn't do something, I don't do it. I mean, I love being with her. I love traveling with her. We hold hands more than anybody will know. We have our spots in each house. And when we sit and watch, content at night, we're always holding hands. I got a cool kid from her. Yeah. So, once we got married, I got, I had two, now I've got three, and I love them all equally, but she's family. I mean, we are family, and my family loves her. And so the secret is just be in tune. And if your partner says something or I can't tell you last time I got angry at her, that's a rarity. But when she does do something, and I can explain to her why she's wrong, right? Yeah. No, she's usually right. But anyway, we keep the disagreements short, quick. Okay. And then we kiss and move on. So I'm very, very, very blessed. And anybody that knows me knows, I think I am in love with the most beautiful woman in the world. And she is. She's gorgeous. And I don't mean that from a physicality standpoint.
No, I understand.
Very pretty, but her heart and her work ethic, and she was in a male dominated industry for years when there were very few women, and she was a leader. She started her agency from scratch and built it. And when my company took off when she and I came together, so I just have a lot of respect and love for her.
Yeah. I mean, you didn't ask me, but if you were to ask me how Tammy and I are so happy, I would say the same thing. We're just, we understand and get one another. And, I have to point out the obvious, which is right behind you. Happiness is not a destination. It is a way of life. And if you think about it, why wouldn't you want to be with someone that makes you happy? Or why wouldn't we want to be with someone who makes us happy? And happiness is it's a very general word, but think about it. What do you have to be, or who do you have to be, or what do you have to eat and be, and just to be happy? And it's not simple, but it certainly is a way of life.
Yeah. Yeah. I know you and Tammy. I think we're very, very fortunate. And it's interesting now on the second marriage, a lot of the friends we run around with are in their second relationship. I'm not saying exclusively.
Yep.
But sometimes that first relationship, maybe kids, maybe not, really teaches you, okay, I still love this person,
Mhm.
but you wake each day like this sucks,
Right.
and once you make those tough decisions of let's try to be happy, which we are. My ex-wife's extremely happy. I'm happy. Jenny's happy. And so, I think that's part of it too.
And I believe you and Jenny have entered a real relationship where the conversation is real. It's difficult, it's challenging, but it's fun. It's without it being authentic and real, it isn't. I know that sounds so silly, but when I look back, I can think of all the times that I needed to pull my head out of my you know what to understand where exactly I was coming from. But Anson Ross Thompson, you're a joy to know. You're a joy to follow. You have a lot of us who read your stuff, and again, I appreciate the way you go about it. And you said it earlier in the show, is not everyone's going to agree with it, and we may not even like it. That's okay, because there's more than 8% of us that read this that are fully connected. And I hope you get feedback from other readers a lot, and share what it is that you're learning from others as well. But how would you like to wrap this up? What would you like to say to leave the audience with something?
Well, on November 20th, I believe I'm going to be speaking at a leadership development day.
Mm-hmm.
And I had something happen in the end of September that really put me on a journey. And that was the loss of one of my good friends. He very successful, and out of the blue, took his own life. And it really just had me questioning a lot about, how well do I know people and all of this. So I went to therapy, as I have done a few times, and was sharing this with my therapist. And through that interaction, he said, what, you write all this stuff, and really, what are you trying to do? And I said, I'm trying to figure out how somebody could get to a point where they become the absolute victim. And I think in our society, we have a narrative that if you're X or Y or Z, well, you're a victim and you don't have a fair chance. And I totally disagree with that. So my next book is Moving from Victimhood to Victory,
Yes.
Building a Bridge. And what I'm doing right now, Greg, and you've given me much more time than I had before, but I'm interviewing people that at one time in their life, they could have thrown up their hands and just said, I can't. But something or another happened that they said, you know what, I can. Yeah. And so I'm having the time of my life interviewing people from all over the country, formerly incarcerated people, people in wheelchairs, people with no arms, just people that you would look at and go, it's a tough road. But how did they get through it? And so I'm building, that will be the talk, and then that'll be my next book too.
Well, I believe a victim or an owner is a choice, as I mentioned to you and again, well, Greg, you have this, it's easy for you to just speak it. I hear you. But every single day, Anson, we have a choice. Who are we going to be? How are we going to show up for self and others? Not just the people in our own house, everybody that's in our 8% or in the circle, as I call it. And so I can't wait. Can't wait to hear it. Can't wait to read it. And I want to just emphasize what you said. You're interviewing hundreds of people of different walks of life all over the country. So these are going to be significantly different ideas, varied ideas that come together, and you just get to put it all together. And I'm not simplifying your work here, but I'm applauding you for reaching out and again being curious about what others have to say about this beautiful topic. So
yeah, I think it's necessary. I see so many people, and in talking to a good friend of mine, he said, you're doing this talk. Most people that watch a talk, they're not victims. And I said, this is not for ultimately the victims. It's for people to share stories of others when you meet a victim. And as well as we all know people that are victim. They get the victimhood mindset. And let's see if we can move them from that neighborhood, from victimhood to the place of, whatever you want to call it, victory, happiness, joy, love. Because you're right, man. At the end of the day, we all get up. We have the same opportunities if we're able-bodied, able-minded to say, I'm gonna lean into today, or I'm gonna shrink back a little bit. It's your choice, and I'd love to lean in.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you leaning in. Again, ladies and gentlemen, Anson Ross Thompson. He has two homes, one here in Denver, one in Indianapolis, or actually in the mountains outside of Denver. God bless you, and thanks for being my guest today, Anson. And give Jenny a big hug. Go out there, be curious, make happiness a way of life. Look at behind where Anson is sitting and ask yourself, what do you need to do? What do you want to do today to be happy? And I might just add, if you are happy, you might leave the victimhood and come to the ownerhood. So again, thank you for your time, big guy, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, appreciate you, man. Keep doing the
All right.
work. Appreciate it. See
You bet.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.